But that brings us into our next speaker. Everyone, I would like for you to give a warm welcome to Tori Chu.
Okay.
Today, she's going to be talking about mob programming from home, a case study in teaching cloud migration from your island getaway. And her favorite cartoon is Lilo and Stitch, which is an excellent choice. I could not support it more. And I think that I'm going to be watching Lilo and Stitch later because of that. Tori also made all of these amazing designs you see for the conference, all these Animal Crossing designs that you see featured on her outfit and on the wall behind her. She designed all of that because she's just a delightful person who has a great eye for design. So please, everyone, welcome Tori.
Hi, everybody. Let me know if ping me in Discord if you can't hear me. But today, as Katie said, we're going to be talking about mob programming, and it definitely is something where there's just some practices to figure out and some pitfalls to look out for. So we'll talk through that. And I'm excited to go after Mia as well because it follows some of those same ideas of what do we do now that we're building these virtual communities. So let's get started here. So some of my background, I'm a developer specialist at Nationwide, and we're using mob programming to onboard people onto DevOps and cloud migration tools that developers are now starting to take on. And in the midst of this, we had to do that shift to working from home. So I'll talk a little bit about our successes and challenges and the solutions that we discovered through that process. And even though we're using cloud migration as an example, you could really apply these principles of mob programming to learning any new subject or solving any problem as a group. So to start off with, back to those struggles of island life or working from home, as Mia was talking about, we want to find new ways to stay engaged with our work community, and we want to find ways to share knowledge to our whole team that's now distributed. We're used to having resources distributed, but now we're talking about having people distributed, and that could be trying to tackle something as big as migrating an app to the cloud, or it could just be a new feature that your team is trying to undertake. And yeah, just staying engaged when a lot of us were in our PJs and it's hard to get in touch with people. So how do we address these working from home issues? So even though DevOps and cloud services have been around for a while now, it's really hitting those enterprise companies at this point. Everyone's realizing they want those benefits of the infrastructure as code and more frequent releases and the cloud cost savings, auto scaling, automatic infrastructure updates, all those benefits now the big companies are talking about. And we have all these developers already that we're trying to onboard onto DevOps and cloud services. So mob programming is one of the ways that we're trying to tackle that. And that's basically our problem statement, is we have a lot of people who need to learn a lot of things as efficiently and as thoroughly as possible. And I'm going to be using Slido to allow you to interact with me during this talk. So let's give that a try. Isabella is here to let you know that there's a poll. Let me try to activate. If you go to Slido, sli.do.com, sli.do, and type in the code foo handle, FOO handle, that will let you participate in this poll. And I'm just curious for now, which best describes your familiarity with cloud services? So are you just starting out learning about it? Are you a seasoned cloud practitioner, or are you usually teaching others? So I know we have a lot of very seasoned cloud developers here, but just to get a feel for it, I saw there are some people who this is maybe a little bit newer to them as well. So you can head over there and let me know. And I have to do a quick disclaimer here that I'm going to mention a bunch of products and companies, but it's not an official endorsement, and feel free to replace any product or company that I mention with an analogous one. So I had been a developer for about 7 years. I was doing front-end and back-end development, and that's when Nationwide started really ramping up our cloud migration strategy. So I was asked to be part of a new type of team. We have an architect, 2 developers, and a system engineer. And our goal is really to rapidly upskill ourselves and on cloud services and DevOps tooling at the same time as we are consulting and coaching for application teams within the company that come to us for help. So we were tasked with learning things like Docker, Kubernetes, Helm, Jenkins, Concourse, Harness, all the AWS offerings, especially EC2, S3, Code Pipeline, CloudFormation, EFS, Elasticache, and then observability tools like New Relic and Splunk. So it could be any new technology. Our team's purpose is really to pick up whatever new technology a team is trying to migrate to and help accelerate them. And we do have experts in each of these areas that we can reach out to if we get stuck, but experts are always very busy. So our team's goal is to multiply the number of people who know this sort of material and help sit with teams and spend that time with them to transfer that skill uplift. So that brings us to mob programming, which is the method that we're using to accomplish a lot of this upskilling. And okay, so let's check in with our poll here. Some other window. Okay, great. So we've got pretty even split between just starting to learn and a seasoned cloud practitioner, and then some people who are actively training others. So that's great. So if you're just starting to learn, the mob programming can be a way that you as a group learn together. And then if you are a seasoned practitioner, this can help you onboard new people to your team or train others. And then, if you're more in a training role, this can be a way to involve these groups that you're trying to onboard. All right, so I'm going to activate this other poll now. So what about your familiarity with, oops, let me stop the other one. Okay, your familiarity with mob programming. So never heard of it, or kind of know, but don't really know the details or good idea of what it is, or you do it regularly. So again, it's sli.do and type in FOO handle. Great. So this is what it practically looks like for us back when we were in the office. So you can see this picture on the right. We've got a bunch of people, and as far as the actual code changes that are happening, there's one giant screen and then one computer for those actual go live changes. And it really goes beyond pair programming to involving your whole team. So it's a similar concept to pair programming, but more people can get involved. And let's see, so we have an application team come to us, and we have all those application team members rotate between these 3 roles. So we've got the driver, who's the hands-on keyboard making the actual changes. We've got a scribe, who's writing down things like key commands, things to remember, documentation links, troubleshooting tips. And then everyone else on that app team are researchers. So, they might be Googling solutions. They're working together with us to help figure out what to do next. So the key here is that the driver is actually not the one who's coming up with what to do. That's the whole group's job. The driver is just putting that physical typing skill to use. So we are also implementing a practice similar to what Target did with their Target Dojo, where we have this coaching team that I'm on, and we come in and provide that uplift and instruction on especially those cloud concepts and DevOps concepts. And so my team doesn't drive in terms of hands on that official keyboard. We are just guiding, and then the app team gets that physical muscle memory experience of doing it themselves. So you might have done things like a group code review if you're a developer, or maybe some ops as well. But this is really allowing for more people to get that chance to drive instead of just one person. And it focuses on that active new discovery rather than just a review of what's been built. So our objective together is to migrate their application to cloud services and DevOps tooling and provide them with that skill uplift in the process. So one key concept, and this is similar to the Target Dojo, it's their real world application that we are migrating. So it has real deliverable benefit to the business, and it helps solidify those concepts, so it's not an abstract hello world app, it's their actual application that they've been dealing with day in and day out. So they know they're part of the equation, and we are helping them apply that to these new concepts. And the way we run it is it's 2 to 6 week engagements with our team, and it's 6 hours a day, Monday through Thursday. And we break up our goals into Google style OKRs, which is just objectives and key results. It's essentially what are some achievable chunks of work we think we can get done in that time period. So let's try this out. Let's say all of us attending this conference today are about to mob program together. And so before I do that, let's check in with our poll. Okay, so 50% never heard of mob programming, totally okay. Good, hopefully this will be helpful then, that's great. Yeah, so some people have tried it a little bit, and then some do it regularly. So that's awesome. So let's say all of us 700 or so people are doing this together right now. And then let's say we have our little friend Tom Nook, and he's typing away. He's at the driver's seat. He's ready to go. And then let's say we also have I'm just gonna use an example of a Docker file, because many of us probably know some of the basic Docker commands, but then as we saw in the poll, some of us don't. So let's take this example of we have a Docker file here. It's just got a simple Tomcat base image and just a tiny little sample application war file. So I'm gonna switch the Slido to I'm gonna stop this poll, and then in the Q&A section, yeah, for now we're going to use this Q&A section for you to type in what you would like to tell Tom Nook to run. So in this section where it says type your question, go ahead and tell Tom Nook what command should he run to build this Docker file into a Docker image. So type your response here. And try to explain a little bit of why that command works, if possible. Okay, great. I will hide those solutions. And well, actually, I guess everyone can see it. So that's part of it. Actually, is go ahead and upvote if you see the correct. Yeah, RMRF. No preserved root. It's a great idea. Go ahead and hit the upvote button if you agree, or downvote if you don't. And then if you don't know what the right answer is, you can type in I don't know. So that's all part of it. Is just giving us that feedback as the coaches and as your teammates where people are at. Yeah, so we'll let that run for a little bit. We'll let Tom Nook see all of your suggestions. And of course, all of this would be more natural if we have our conference call going in a real life scenario. There's audio conversation happening, but this is just kind of simulating that effect, right? All right, so I'll let you guys run with that for a little bit while I talk about some of the benefits of mob programming. So yeah, definitely number one is getting that muscle memory of doing it yourself and getting your hands on that keyboard, and then code ownership, because as we know, especially if we're developers transitioning to DevOps or vice versa, it can be easy to feel like, oh, that's ops job or that's dev's job. And so now you're getting your fingerprints on it, and you're getting more ownership. And then it can help standardize best practices. Maybe you have some anti-patterns or just conflicting conventions in your code, or maybe from an ops perspective, for example, we have a CloudFormation template that everyone should be using to create the AWS resources in a standard way, or certain approved file store to application connections. So it can help standardize those secure best practices. And then, yeah, uplift from square zero. So as I mentioned, even for my team, we were pretty new to a lot of these concepts, but because it's kind of crowdsourcing and it's learning together, yeah, it's kind of that two heads are better than one kind of scenario, and many heads are even better. So this allows you to make progress even when you're new to an area. And then it's actually better if some people don't, or if nobody knows the correct answer, because then you're learning and teaching those troubleshooting and problem solving skills. And then came the transition to working from home. So we realized this is definitely something we could still do from home, because we still only have that one driver and one screen share at a time. So so we figured we'll keep just having those discussions, those mob programming discussions, over our conference calls. Or so we're in Skype, you might use Zoom or whatever you prefer. So I'm going to keep going through some pitfalls that you might run into. Yeah, as Katie mentioned, there's a lot of things that could go wrong when you have so many people contributing at one time. So one is you might find that people are a little bit reluctant to drive, or it might be finding it very exhausting, or there could be some uneven switching. Some people might get less time or too much time. I'll go over the solutions after I run through all of these. So there's could also be, especially for newer people, hesitance to ask their questions, because by nature, people who do know what's going on are going to be contributing a lot. And so then it can be easy to feel overwhelmed if you don't know. And then similarly, you might find that people might be disengaging when they're not driving, or if the pace is too fast for them. And then a couple practical quick things. You could have some scattered information with all these, you have like Skype or Raga Chat or Slack. We all have many platforms, so that can be hard to find later. And then especially working from home, finding a good whiteboarding tool could be difficult. So let's take a look. Before I go over solutions, let's check in with our mob programming session that's going here virtually. We've got Nook here typing away, and then we've got his villager friends that are helping out, of which you are some of them. So let's take a look at some of these answers. Yeah, this is great. So Docker build, and then -t island, Docker build my app, period. Yeah, exactly. So we can see that by kind of crowdsourcing these ideas, we got there, and everybody else who's attending who may not have seen this before also had a chance to see what's going on, and maybe some people who haven't had to use Docker before it now got to see these results, right? And so so we'll go back to Tom Nook here. And so as an example, right, we're telling Tom Nook, type Docker build. So then he goes and he types. And then we're explaining to him, you have to put -t and then your app name so that you tag it. And so he starts doing that. And then as was mentioned, the period talks about which directory and to include all those files. So he types period, and then we tell him to hit enter, and then it starts building. So great. So now, even though Nook didn't know this command beforehand, he's had that experience of hearing it or seeing it on the screen, and then has to go like through your brain and then out physically through the keyboard, right? So that's that extra involvement that you don't get from just watching a talk or something or seeing someone else do it. Great, so now that it's built, go ahead and I'll archive these existing answers. And then let's see, so now in this Slido box, go ahead and put in what should Tom Nook run in order to run his Docker image. So he's built it successfully, and then what command should he use to run it? Okay, and so I'm gonna keep going while you guys do that. So in this virtual mob programming illustration, let's say Philbert and June here didn't know anything about Docker. They've also gotten a chance to see it, even though they weren't the ones with the hands on the keyboard. And then let's say Bruce and Dottie here at the bottom, maybe they did already know, but they still were engaged because they were helping other people. They were discussing what the right answer is. So it just involves your whole team in a more full way. So now some solutions to those pitfalls to watch out for. One is definitely switching drivers more frequently. it can be challenging when you get so sucked into troubleshooting a specific item. So I would say definitely setting an alarm is key for that. And we've been doing switching every hour when working from home, because there's some overhead with getting people to the right point on everybody's machine. But when you're in office, it's suggested to be 15 to 30 minutes that you switch, and making sure you take breaks in between there. And yeah, we found that with a large group, you just kind of have to make a spreadsheet and put when they last drove, when they last scribed. Even though it seems like annoying to have to do that, it's very easy to miss people, especially virtually, because you're not looking people in the face. So it can be difficult to remember who hasn't driven, or yeah, it could be hard to get volunteers. So that just helps it move smoothly. And then with hesitance to ask questions or disengaging, that's kind of why I wanted to include some of those Slido polls, because we were just finding that added interaction just helps people feel involved, stay paying attention. And even the freeform option for Slido polls was really helpful, because then you can just ask people for how are you feeling about this topic, which we found was very important, especially when we had some groups where the level of expertise was very different and people were just feeling overwhelmed and didn't have an outlet for it. That was really helpful. So I started saying, just, if you feel fine with all the material we've just covered, you just put something in there. You could put, I want tacos. It doesn't need to be anything super deep. It just needs to let us know that you're there and you're doing okay. But that anonymity was really a big deal, because yeah, people who were feeling overwhelmed didn't have that outlet, and so we got some great questions through those anonymous answers that we wouldn't have gotten otherwise. And also just doing an open ask for what questions people have, lunch and end of the day, and those feeling checks at the end of the day, and end of the week retro, as well as making sure you're tying back what you're doing to those goals. Again, we use those OKRs, but just whatever goal you have, make sure that you are tying what you're doing back, because when people are new to the material, it can be easy to totally lose the thread of what's going on. Because as you know, there's always a lot of deep in the weeds configuration issues that can be overwhelming for people who are new to the material. And I've actually been surprised both ways in the polls. Sometimes people are tracking way more than I thought they would be, and then sometimes people are way more confused than I thought they would be. So it's definitely valuable information. And then as far as scattered information, just pick a platform with good persistence and searchability that you like. It's really about picking one and sticking with it, and trying to be mindful and helpful when people are starting to drift off into, maybe you mostly use Rocket Chat, but some people are drifting off into Skype messaging or something. Our pick is Rocket Chat because it's chat ops and it's open source, but whichever one you choose, just stick with it. And then whiteboarding, again, pick a platform that everyone can see, edit, and save. If you don't already have one, app.diagrams.net works fine. Just essentially have a plan for how you're going to get that whiteboarding style information out to people who are attending virtually. Oh, and one more note about attending virtually, back with the disengagement. You've probably figured this out already, but it can just be difficult because you can't see people's facial reactions. You can't tell like sadness or frustration, or maybe they're just not even at their computer, right? So that's a big part of why those polls are so important. Okay, so let's check back in with Nook. He's typing away. He's getting all these suggestions. Let's see what came up here. Yeah. Right, Docker run-it tag name bash. Yep, kind of got variations on that theme. That's awesome. And again, in real life, we would be having more back and forth about each part of this and explaining it more. But this is kind of just to get the feel of having that a little bit of back and forth of crowdsourcing an answer, and then we're telling Nook here that hasn't touched this before what he needs to do. Yeah, so we'll tell him Nook type Docker run. So he types Docker run, and then we'll tell him type -t so that it's interactive. And then we have him type in his image name. And then let's see, for these purposes, I'm actually, oops, oh no. For these purposes, I'm actually gonna report forward it just so that I can expose it. Yeah, okay. So again, he's getting that experience of typing it in, even though he's just learning this for the first time. And then if you already knew the material, you're staying engaged by participating. And then if you have no idea, you got to see it in action in a sample application. Let's see. So okay, so that's starting up, and then let's see what that created. And then we would talk through, it's going to be at sample because that's where Tomcat unzipped your WAR file to. And then look, all Tom Nook wanted to do was tell you, hello, Deserted Island DevOps. He just wanted to welcome you and celebrate building this incline together. So as a whole mob programming group of 700 people or something, we helped Nook build his bridge, and everyone's so excited. So that's really what it's about, is Nook has been able to build and run his Docker image, even though he never heard of Docker before. So at its full potential, I would say the benefits of mob programming are that you get that hands-on muscle memory experience with new technology, that it can feel like it's just abstract or just like a lot of information otherwise if you're just sitting and watching someone else do it. And then, yeah, you're spreading knowledge to so many more people at once because it's a big group. And because it's your real world application that we're migrating, it's not throwaway work, and it helps give you a reference point for what you're doing with these new concepts. And so to go back to those struggles of island life that we talked about in working from home, as far as staying engaged, you're actively discussing with all these people. You're hopefully answering these group questions or polls, and you're sharing knowledge by through all these discussions. We're getting everybody together and sharing knowledge as a group, even during this time of physical distancing and isolation. So it might be because I'm an introvert, but having all of this really active conversation for 6 hours out of the workday, I really do feel like I've had a lot of active people time during this whole physical distancing situation. And obviously, you still need to have your fun social time, but as far as during the workday, I feel like this has made it very lively and interactive and really educational for the groups that we're working with, as well as for myself. And so, yeah, if all of our coworkers are villager friends over here, we're all working from home, but through the magic of Dodo Airlines or the internet, we can still connect with each other, and we can still get work done together, and we can still learn and grow together. So if you have any questions, you can stop by this virtual coffee shop in speaker Q&A for a chat. And then, yeah, if you want this little Deserted Island DevOps hoodie, you can go to that exclamation point swag in the Twitch, or you can stop by my Twitter, and I have it linked there as well. So thanks.
Tori, that was amazing.
Okay.
I just, first of all, your ability to do those live polls and live code and do all, I'm like so impressed right now. And also the Q&A has been going wild. People have lots of questions.
Yeah, hopefully I'll be able to look through in a minute here after I go. Yeah.
So I want to start with one that was in the very beginning, which was just some clarification around your job title and your job role.
Mm-hmm.
Because there were just a couple questions, people being like, what does it mean? and what is your like day-to-day? Like, how do you get to be you, Tori?
As far as what you call us, that's a great question. My official title is still developer specialist, but we kind of work very closely with the tech consulting team, and our tech consulting team is really, it's kind of like Ghostbusters, who are you gonna call kind of situation. They really come help you with anything. And so we're kind of, we're not exactly tech consultants, but we are similar in that we get kind of deployed out when people especially request that additional help. So we are going by that target dojo model. So you might call us like that dojo coaching team. But yeah, as far as my technical title is just developer, but yeah, you could say tech consulting, coaching, any of those terms.
I think that makes sense. The other question that I saw in a couple different forms was really about how you engage and make sure that you hear from quieter folks, introverts, or people who just have more trouble being heard. So how do you make sure that everyone in the room is like present?
Yeah, definitely. I think one big part is doing that Slido stuff so that especially that open, the freeform response format, so that people really can let out what they're thinking. So that way, so especially with questions, that's good. So those questions get out there, or those tough feelings, so that those tough feelings get out there, and then also just trying to be mindful of it and just in the moment. If someone, my mind was blown when someone said, "Did you know that introverts, if you interrupt them, they stop talking?" I was like, yeah, isn't that what everyone does? I didn't realize that that's a thing. I didn't realize that some people just keep talking after they get interrupted. I was like, no, if you interrupt me, that means I'm done, because clearly that's how it works. So I think as an introvert, just keeping an eye out for, did someone just briefly make a peep, and coming back to them. But yeah, really, yeah, those Slido polls are really helpful. And then if people are willing to give their names in those Slido responses, then that provides that opportunity so that we can be like, hey, person's name, can you talk more about this item? Or if they want to be anonymous, then that allows that as well.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. And from the point of view of someone who's the person who keeps talking, I can say that like I have learned over my career that I need to listen for and look for cues from people who are trying to talk, who are not as loud as me. And then sometimes I can use my my volume, if nothing else, to give that person a space.
Exactly. And then also with that rotating the driver, that does help as well. It does still take a while to get to everybody, but at least when you're driving, there's a little more space for you to be expressing where you're at. So hopefully that also helps catch some of that if it's starting to fall through the cracks.
Absolutely. And like I said, there's a ton of questions and comments and just general love for you going on in the Discord. Tori, thank you so much. That was adorable and useful. The best of both worlds.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I'll jump in that speaker Q&A and see if there's any.
Do. Everyone, give a warm virtual thank you to Tori. And we're headed into our lunch, which just means, you know, that we can all have a little break before we come back for some extra talks that you're going to love. So remember, stay tuned. We'll be back in just a little bit, and we're headed into our little lunch loop.